This is the OverReaction podcast.
Steve,
Hey, how are you?
good. Welcome.
Yeah, nice to be joining your podcast.
Yeah, ready to overreact? Just kidding.
Now I get the name. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So, good time away on the 4th. Get some good
Yeah,
stuff
fun
to give
time.
R&R.
Yeah, fun time. We had all our family in, got lots of time with them, and getting a break now. Back to the real world.
I bet. So what's your so I just did this little poll on LinkedIn because this morning I was thinking about it. I do polls every few weeks. I was just about what do people do for email? Because I just want to see people, and so I'm already in like a couple hours. I've got like 120 votes, which is cool. So I'm one of those people that I check probably every hour or two, regardless of where I am on vacation. I don't like a couple things. I've kind of built up my own personal brand. I'm a communicator. Like I don't like that people have to wait a week or two to hear back from me or a few days. So secondly, I don't like a big inbox. I find the shorter my inbox, the more organized I am. If I have if I'm addressing most of the stuff in my inbox quickly, I'm probably doing most of the big things I need to do as the leader of my business. And then third, I couldn't imagine coming back from vacation to hundreds upon hundreds and hundreds of emails I would have to dig. Because basically I'd have to say, hey, for the next day when I got back, all meetings are canceled. So I'm gonna have to dig this out. So that's my business productivity hack. What about you? What do you do on vacation? Do you check in with email every once in a while? You say, nah, just leave it.
It's super similar to what you do. I, as a rule, will not close my PC at the end of the day without all my emails being down to at least one screen.
That's great.
My little hack is if I don't need to deal with it today or I want a reminder, I'll push it out of my inbox and use the timed forward feature. So it'll come back to my inbox when I need to deal with it. But I want to be responsive. I'm checking email all the time. Just ask Amy. I try to stay in touch. I want to be responsive. It's getting a little harder because sometimes I'm doing business with people overseas and they're just not as open to getting emails on Saturdays and Sundays. So I try to be more respectful of what I'm sending and when I'm sending it. But yeah, I'm constantly in contact. No joke intended.
Yeah. What's your philosophy on just replying to emails? So mine is, even if I can't get to it, I try to let people know that I've got it. So it's almost, there's that old saying, right? Like the only thing, worse than bad communication is no communication. Like just hearing nothing, your imagination doesn't take you to, oh, they're working on something, or oh, they're just really being thoughtful. It's like they don't care, or I don't know what's going on.
Takes you bad places for sure. My
Well
first job in
said.
the business was as a customer service rep, and I was on the phones on day 2. I didn't know anything, and all I could do was say, "I'm working on it. I'm working on it," and keep them posted on it till I got the problem solved. So from a early age, if you will, I learned to be super responsive and keep people posted that I'm working on it. So I will not let something sit. I'll let them know I'm working on it, even if I can't get it done. And as my partner MP says, bad news never ages well, and especially you got to get that out to people. So, just a couple things I like to swear by, if you will.
I totally agree. I guess that opens the door. Let's talk about your background. Like you said, your first job was as a customer service rep. Who was that for? And how did you get into healthcare? And then how did you get into healthcare tech? Like, how did that all come about?
I think I have a pretty good origin story. After I graduated from college, I heard a guy down the street needed his lawn mowed and fence painted for the summer. So I needed some money, and I went and knocked on the door and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a job. Why interview for jobs?" And they said, "Sure, start working." And about day 3, one of the co-founders of Shared Medical Systems, whose house it was, walked out and said, "What are you doing here? We need good people at SMS. Come in and apply for a job." And
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's true too. Harvey was an amazing, accomplished guy in the space, and he and Jim Mackler had built, were building a really amazing company at SMS. And I started there as a customer service rep, and within about a year or so, got into sales and sort of moved up the ranks of sales. Moved around, was covered New York, and got promoted to manager, and then they moved me to the West Coast where I was a regional manager. Lived in the Bay Area for about 5 or 6 years. Had a couple jobs out there, and then moved back to Pennsylvania and had a couple roles at corporate. Long story short, I ended up running sales for SMS, and right about the time we got acquired by Siemens Medical, and the integration was very complicated with Siemens Medical. German hardware company buys American software company. But through that process, learned and grew a bunch, and ended up running sales for Siemens Medical and in the US. Did that for about 3 years. And from there, I was fortunate enough to land at Microsoft, where I was the general manager for healthcare and life sciences. And then with a small group of people, helped start a business inside Microsoft called the Health Solutions Group. And I ran sales for that group in the US and about 15 other countries around the world. And we had an exciting run. We bought some businesses and built some products, and really made a big splash for Microsoft. Products you probably your audience probably knows about, Amalga or Health Vault, things like that. And I'd never done anything global before, and so that was really interesting, challenging, hard, but very interesting. And after about 5 or 6 years, the company decided to spin the asset of the Health Solutions Group off into a joint venture with General Electric Healthcare. And it was a joint venture of 2 blue chip companies. Took us a while to get figured out, but we had Caradigm focused on population health. And I stayed there until about 2017, and then a really talented gal named Christine Boyle and I decided to start Get to Market Health as a consultancy, helping companies with their go-to-market. Sadly, Christine is no longer with us, but she really had an impact on lots of great people in our space. And I'm sure you know and remember her. And I was fortunate enough to bring my partner, MP Brock Zimmerman, into the firm before Christine left us, and she and I run a business helping mid-size healthcare tech firms with their go-to-market.
That's awesome. I want to talk a little bit more about Get to Market in a second. It's so, when you jumped over to Microsoft, how close was that to when Cerner bought Sorian?
It was 5 years ahead of that, probably.
Okay.
I live in the area. I stayed close to lots of the people at Siemens Medical, and with the Sorian product, all that. That was quite a time. Siemens really struggled with the business. I think it was expectations, but there really were cultural differences. At the heart of it, it's a German hardware engineering oriented company. And they found the HIT market to be harder than I think they thought.
Yeah, they found it just from so many calls and just being in the industry long enough. They found even informatics and software in what should be in their wheelhouse in medical imaging difficult. So that, they get the big iron like incredibly well, CT/MR, even monitoring devices and anything like that. But the second they get where it's kind of pure software, they seem to struggle. And that's so fascinating to me.
Yeah,
it's not just tech. Even within tech, there's cultural differences in what it takes to be successful. And the Venn diagram doesn't have a big overlap, it seems to be.
Yeah, it really is an interesting dynamic, because whether it's Siemens, GE, or Philips, the big hardware guys, they attract mechanical engineers, right? They're great at double E's or mechanical engineers. That's who wants to go work there. But if they're in the market competing for talent against Google, Microsoft, Apple, they struggle. And I just think that they don't really have the talent and ultimately the leadership in software that need to be great in that space. And you see it. You see it in sort of how they act. And it's funny, when I first went to Siemens, I flew over to Erlangen, Germany, and they took us in the showroom. Literally, they called it the showroom, and all the machines were humming and lights were on, and that was it. It was, here's the machine, here's the spec, here's what it does. Yes, we need salespeople, but they didn't really have what I would call a sales-oriented culture the way you might see in a health tech IT company.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. So I visited Philips overseas, Toshiba overseas, Siemens overseas. I've been to GE's places in Waukesha and Pewaukee. I mean, there's so many different places they are. And every time there is the factory in the field, and the internal people say it. And the second I hear it, I know you're in trouble. Internally, when they talk, well, that's the factory or that's the field. You don't hear that in Microsoft. I mean, there's obviously sales, but it isn't. These are two completely separate universes, and they're fundamentally at odds. And when someone says factory and field, we saw that at Siemens, saw that at Philips, others. They weren't talking about how we work together. We have different areas of expertise. We try to work together. They're like, no, we're two opposing factions within supposedly one organization. I always found that morbidly intriguing.
Yeah, and I hadn't really thought about it the way you're positioning, but it's absolutely true. The tech companies that we work with as clients, or that I've had the good fortune of working for, IT companies, usually there's plenty of heat and plenty of arguing over things, but it's done in a mostly collaborative way between product management, development, and field representing customer. But it's not like, hey, the factory's going to build this thing and we're going to put it on the loading dock and you can come pick it up and take it to your customer. I mean, that's the mindset in the big iron.
Yeah, no doubt. Speaking about culturally, just given your background, I always got to talk about Epic. I just do. They're always one of my favorite things. How much of Epic, outside of meaningful use, which I think most people will agree happen to remarkably align with Epic somehow, magically, I don't think there's anything going on behind the scenes necessarily, although maybe, but how much of Epic's dominance is a function of them truly being even outside of healthcare, a world-class software development organization versus their main competition like Cerner and others just not being able to do the basic block and tackling nearly as well?
Yeah, so Epic is quite an amazing story. I ran Epic, I want to say 30 years ago, maybe more, in New York City, where they first showed up doing just a clinic scheduling app.
Yeah.
And they did so many things right. They stayed with the integrated database. They didn't chase the latest tech waves. Clearly their architecture, has grown over the years, but it's never been front of the wave, right? It's always, been what they were comfortable dealing with. I think they really got customer satisfaction right. I think they were really smart to build a culture and a team mindset. You were going to move to Madison. I mean, until very recently, 100% of the people used to live in Madison or the area, and you were going to get indoctrinated. You were going to probably come there right out of college, and you were really going to, bleed Epic red. I mean, they really built an amazing machine. They raised the bar in terms of what it really took to install systems. I mean, the numbers they would quote to people about what they need to spend were mind blowing to those of us who were trying to compete against them. But they built loyalty, so they've done so many things right. At the same, and I think their timing was great with meaningful use, but they were probably on a path to get there anyhow. And they really, they've never made an acquisition that I've ever heard of. They haven't had integration problems, and integrating systems is hard. And Cerner has found that, or Oracle has now found that out with Cerner and Sorian. Clearly, McKesson, had that problem in spades. So I think they've done a lot of things right. I think they stifle a lot of innovation, which is unfortunate because they're so big and so dominant, and have their customers trained so well to defend them at all costs. But they certainly have done many good things for the industry.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I try to look at other industries and see where's a corollary to a dominant player over such a long period of time, to whether the secondary player like Cerner isn't really a competitor anymore, right? And I can't come up with it exactly, especially not across enterprise grade software. Like Microsoft had operating system, but it wasn't enterprise grade.
Right.
So I go like finance and banking and education, and I can't come up with it. I've gone through it. And so that's where I kind of ask, to me, it almost seems like Epic's competitors made it way too easy for them. Like I'm not taking it away. Single integrated, they didn't chase technical rabbits.
Right.
They really understood how to implement on time or close to on time. But compared to the competitors, when it came to, I think they seemed to innovate on trust, where lots of other companies broke trust, not because their salespeople were bad, because product development was consistently way behind when they said something was going to come out. Implementation was a lot longer, or they really shouldn't have customized. Like Cerner goes into a deal and they customize the heck out of it, and they should have done an honest quote like, okay, that's going to cost X, going to take this long. And they're like, well, we got to win the deal. And Epic's like, no. We're going to tell you what it's going to be like. You're going to pay this, but here's your expectations. And they meet those expectations, where so many other companies don't meet those expectations. And so I think it's a combination of Epic really knowing who they are and knowing where the competitive advantage is going to be. And it's not technology that their advantage is going to be. It's going to be in where other companies consistently missed expectation, missed timelines. They don't solve your problem quick. Like if Epic, if it needs 3 people over a weekend to come fix an issue, Epic sends 5 or 6.
Yeah.
It's just this, I feel comfortable. And from everything I've gathered from tons of calls and research, et cetera, it seems to be that more than it is that Epic has a technical architectural advantage over their competitors.
Yeah, I think another bit of secret sauce that sometimes goes unnoticed is that they actually really, really hold their customers accountable. I sat with a CIO of Duke several years ago, who was a little unnerved because a bad report was going to go to his board that week or that month during the install, because they had mistakenly hired a consultant who used to work in another Epic account. They weren't allowed to do that. They do a fantastic job of making, Meditech as well, of making the customers own their commitments. And so I think that's helped them. I do think that the other companies have gotten in their own way and made it a little easier for Epic.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I was saying this in another, it might have been a previous podcast or conversation, because if I was at Epic, to avoid scrutiny that's already starting to come on high, or on the hill, so to speak, is I would look at it and say, hey, we're basically kind of becoming the operating system for healthcare, right? For health systems, et cetera.
That's certainly their view.
But we can't be in the job of picking or blocking other tech that comes in, because then we're in trouble. Then we're like Microsoft Windows in the 90s. So if that's, and maybe they're arcing towards it. I've never heard anything like that, but I would, and they don't listen to anyone from the outside. So it doesn't, I'm just speaking into the wind, but that's if they did listen, that's what I'd recommend is, hey, you're going to continue to win deal after deal, but don't try to come out with every competing app to every digital health app that comes out, every whatever else. Like, be the operating system. You have some big core applications already being used, but don't gatekeep.
Yeah,
Don't be seen gatekeeping and keep people out and blocking data exchange, and just don't go there. You've done it already. Just stop.
yeah.
Stop.
It's going to be a challenge DNA wise for them, because the mentality of the company is that they feel like their customers should look to them for everything. Every possible bit of tech should be theirs. You hear the same stories I do from companies who have meetings and want to partner, and then nothing happens, and suddenly there's something in the product pipeline for Epic that looks similar, and they just don't. I saw that at Microsoft. They took a pretty close look at the Amalga product, decided they wanted to build something on their own. Came out and looked kind of similar, different enough. So I'm sure that they were fine on it, but nonetheless, their view is that if everything just came under their umbrella, it would all be good. And eventually they'll run into some trouble on that.
Well, they already are. I like I said, I've been doing calls, and again, they won't talk on the record, and I can get why they won't, but I've talked to probably 24 Epic CIOs, just catching up. Like, I don't have any other purpose for just catching up over the last 3 months. And all of them, to some extent, have talked about they want Epic to stay in your lane. Like, you're getting outside your lane now. Like, I'm the CIO. Our organization has things to do. Yeah, we signed this gigantic, massively long contract, but if we want baby scripts or we want something else to come in, we're doing it. Stop. Just because you might have something in the future, but don't. We are. So it's interesting. I was starting to see some CIOs kind of reclaim their responsibility. They're not allowing a shadow, basically CIO entity. They're kind of stepping in. So I think, and a lot of and a couple of the younger ones for sure, CIOs. They're not in their 60s, 50s, and 60s. They're coming up their late 30s. Nope.
Right. Well, I also think that something has changed there a little bit, in that the longer they've had Epic, the less they salute and follow every dictate that comes out of the corporate headquarters, mm-hmm. Right? They're brand new and just starting with their Epic install. It's just not worth there's no point in ruffling any feathers, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And I guess that's probably, let's get into to get to market health. I'm sure that's a big part of, or at least a continuing part of it, is how these companies can coexist and thrive in an Epic environment, including, hey, when someone's in the middle of a go live with Epic, stop wasting your time. And even for a year or two or so afterwards, stay in touch with them, but just understand they're not going to have the bandwidth, their culture, they're drinking Kool-Aid, all that kind of stuff. There are definitely windows of opportunity, but I'd imagine or maybe I'm completely wrong on it, but I imagine that's part of what you're helping these companies with.
100% on point. We have sort of a profile we've built up about, what are the signals an Epic account will be open to doing some things that aren't sort of standard Epic protocol, and we try to help people with that.
That is smart.
You've met investors. I've met investors who literally won't invest in a company if the product involves sort of being in a swim lane with Epic. It just can get too slow for them. And look, they're the elephant in the room, and you have to have a strategy 100%. To work with them or work around them, or just or try to hide from them, and stay out of their way. They're just too big and important.
Yeah. So tell me more about Get to Market Health. Like, mm-hmm. What kind of organizations you helping? What are the main things you help with? What are some edge cases that are pretty unique that have come up?
Yeah, so first of all, it's been a fantastic ride. In 2017, when we started the business, I didn't know where it would go, but it's been really a fun, great experience. We've helped, I guess, close to 4 companies now in the health tech space. Never veered out of that. Companies trying to enter a new market, which might mean with a new product, or might mean I'm in the US and I want to go to the UK or Australia, or companies from outside the US who want to come to the US. They look at it as sort of the big white whale that they want to catch, so we've done work like that. Our our work sort of follows our name. We're only focused on healthcare, only focused on tech, and we help with get to market activities. And one of the things we've been doing a lot of lately is what we call a health check, where we'll parachute in. An investor's about to put some money in a company. They'll want us to sort of give them a sense of the health of the go-to-market activities. We've had CEOs call us in and say, "Hey, I've got a new gal or guy enroll. I'd like you to look over their shoulder and give me a sense of how it's going." Sometimes we've been brought in when they've got a situation that isn't working. They need to make some replacements, and we're pretty good judges of talent. For sure, I've hired at least 500 people in the space, and so I've been through sort of what works and what doesn't work, and we try to help our clients with that. So, if it's helping with their website or something like that, that's not our thing. If it's helping them with leads and turning leads into opportunities and turning opportunities into signed contracts and then fulfilling it, that's where we get brought in. Our projects are generally pretty short. We're a lean team. We're agile. We don't have any juniors to make billable, which is a different experience than most people have with the consultants or advisors. But it's part of our, if you will, secret sauce. My partner MP and I are both on the ground helping the client. We've been there, sort of done that, and if there's follow up, we do that, and then we have a lot of fun. We get to work with a really good group of clients. We're not for everybody, and everybody's not for us, but when we find a good match, it works out really well.
And that's great. So what do you see that is a common thread of need across most of the companies you come across, where maybe they have incorrect assumptions, or they're doing something wrong, or they haven't thought of? Is there like kind of a Pareto distribution of what is that Pareto distribution of most organizations struggle with this?
I'll give you two. One, which we don't know how to solve, and that is most people don't really put enough money into product management, in my opinion. They say, I've got a head of development, he or she's going to drive it. Yeah. And in my experience, the great companies have somebody, a strong product manager, who's arguing for his or her space and the problems they're going to solve, and they're pushing and riding
like hard. Like a Jamie Geyer type.
Yeah, like a Jamie Geyer, or people I've known throughout the years who really own thinking about the product and what the outcome needs to be, and then helping dev build it, right? So we see that everywhere. And I think it's just kind of maybe there's a paucity of actual great people or a shortage of cash, but companies don't always invest in product management. We think they should. Again, it's not something we can help with except call it out when we see it. The second thing is, I think there's often a disconnect between what people want from sales, or what they imagine can happen with sales, and what they're willing to do about it. And so a lot of times we get called in when sales, they tried something that hasn't worked. And normally we sort of have to rebuild confidence and trust, maybe from the CEO about sales, or from sales up to the CEO. Because sales can't solve all your problems. It can help a lot, and it's a food group we care a lot about. We work with every day and help them be successful. But they can't fix every problem you have, and oftentimes there's an expectation from the founder that, hey, I can go out and sell X systems. I'm going to hire somebody. They're going to go out and be able to sell the same thing in the same way, and that doesn't work. A lot of times we get called into that, help with fill that void, or figure that void out.
Yeah, I've seen that myself. Like when I've hired people, usually I'm the one that starts the initial sales. Back when I was a class, it was the same thing. Growing the sales organization, the research teams. I do it really differently, and you just can't. You can't, especially when it's a personality-driven way to sell, which some people do. That's me. Like, I'm not a rigorous person on it. I like sharing. I think my opinion, I'm kind of ego driven. I think everyone thinks my stuff's funny. And so I just post a bunch of stuff. So I got a huge amount of name recognition. Well, I can't really teach someone what to do on that. So that's not programmatic, and that's not systemic. So have you come across many organizations where they're actually doing a good job selling, but almost like I always joke with GE. GE can sell the guts out of stuff, but they churn. their churn rate's almost as high as their new sale rate that I've
Right.
seen, like in packs and stuff like that. They sell like
Right.
crazy. It's almost like Seinfeld. You know how to make the sale. You don't know how to keep the customer, so to speak. Do you run into that much with the churn rate? They're doing a great job selling, but they're not. I mean, they're just too many customers bleeding out the back.
Yeah, generally, I mean, I have opinions about that, but generally, our client base isn't. We tend to work with sort of mid-sized companies, small to mid-sized companies, and
So they don't have the length of time.
Yeah, and they're
run
pretty
into that
close.
yet.
They're pretty close to their customers, right? If they're losing, churn. I mean, you find that churn usually as a sign or a being caused a lot about size of the business, where they get in silos and they sort of lose touch with it. But it's a important problem, and they got to monitor it. I think the founder thing is really interesting, because look, if I were a customer and I could deal with a founder or deal with a junior sales rep, there's no question who I'd rather deal with. But the issue is, at some point, as the founder, you got to run the rest of the business, and you gotta let go a little bit of it, and helping them find that is where we find a lot of opportunity. And helping, we're not recruiters, but helping people find the right person to work with them, and work, set expectations about what they'll be able to do.
Oh, that's a really good point. So I don't want you to give away any secret sauce, but are there any things that you see that make up like a world-class sales organization?
Yeah, I've had the good fortune of working for a couple. First of all, I think, look, some companies are product driven. Siemens Medical, they're a product driven company, right? They engineer great machines.
Yeah.
They want to put the machine in a showroom. They expect people to come to it, find it, love it, buy it. They're not a sales first culture, right? You look at some companies in the business, like, I've never worked with Oracle, but generally people think of them as a sort of a world-class sales organization. I think it has to come from the top. When I started at Shared Medical System a long time ago, I mean, they were a sales-oriented company, right? They recognized great sales performance, they rewarded it, they tolerated a couple of screw ups, they let you grow and develop. People in sales were able to grow and be leaders in the company. I've worked with or helped other clients where they didn't really have that culture. If you were an engineer, you were going to run the company someday. If you were a sales gal or guy, hey, we'll give you a good job, but you're never going to run the company. So I think great sales cultures, they need strong leaders who can sort of defend and hold the salespeople accountable, right? And don't tolerate a lot of BS. Because a good salesperson can give you more than the average amount of BS, and it takes strong leadership to sort of manage that. You have to, good sales cultures allow for some cowboys, cowboys and cowgirls. Sometimes some cultures aren't good with that, but sales can be really hard, and sometimes you need somebody who can come in and change the discussion and take a different tack than just sort of following a straight sales process. I would say the last thing is they have to have a mix of both sales process and sales art. Sales is still an art form. It's not just do these 17 steps and you'll get a deal at the other end of it.
Yeah, I was watching this. That's well said. I was watching this podcast with these big Silicon Valley guys. Started companies, they invested in companies in there. And most of what they were saying was good. And then a couple of them said, yeah, what's really going to be disruptive to businesses is how AI is going to be able to do all the selling. It'll be an AI for the vendor, software vendor, and an AI purchasing bot from the company, and they'll work things out. And that's the only time I just glitched. I had to pause the podcast for a second. Like, well, I'm sorry, what? Like, that doesn't, like, my brain glitched. Like, there's digital front doors. There's a lot of stuff that can happen, but I could see, like, at a consumer level, sure. Like, if you're just buying an app or a shoe or something, I don't really, unless you're going to get a tuxedo and it's for a wedding or so, maybe you can do it. But enterprise deals, I can't get my head around how it would, you don't need really salespeople anymore. That's just all gone. I can't get because there's so much nuance, as you know.
Right.
to what the customer wants, and they can't even articulate it. They couldn't even explain it in a really good sheet to fill out what I'm looking for, because you'd be picking up on things and go, hang on, you know, all these other questions, because there just isn't a, like you said, sales to me is like interpersonal relationships.
Right.
I can intuitively know what my wife wants, but there's not a formula. There's not just a checkbox. It's such a dynamic relationship, and sales in the B2B space is like it, that every customer is different. You can't just go bop, bippity boppity, here you go, checklist, fill it out. Here's your slider scale to negotiate. We're done. Okay, good.
Yeah, see, I think it's a really important point, and part of what we do is try to assess where the client is in terms of how enterprise the product really is, you know, because they're going to hire a different type of salesperson based on how commoditized the product is, or how much sort of blank sheet of paper it takes.
Yeah,
you know,
it's true.
I don't see AI taking over for enterprise salespeople. I do see it helping both buyers and sellers, though. There's a lot of prep work, a lot of stuff I can do through AI as a salesperson to make sure I know my customer. And I suspect for customers learning more about the company, having AI be on the lookout for them. Again, enterprise stuff. I see AI as an aid. Consumer stuff, you know, when on Amazon suggesting products that they think I need all the time, right? That's not a human doing it. They run an algorithm against what I've done in the past or what I seem to like, and helping. And we'll see some of that creep into enterprise sales, but not too much, I don't think.
I agree. I'm such a podcast geek, listening to different stuff. I don't watch the news, but I watch podcasts. And someone else was talking about, had nothing to do with healthcare, it's about lawyers. Now, AI is going to be able to do a lawyer's job. Like, no, AI could do a lot of a paralegal's job, but AI is not going to be a trial lawyer in the courtroom. So if I'm a trial lawyer, AI is going to help me do discovery and research like much faster, cheaper. But it can't argue my case. It can't make a compelling argument right in the middle of it and go back and forth in an ultra dynamic, unpredictable manner. And that's sales to me, same thing. Yeah, enterprise sales is a trial lawyer. You can have AI augment and help the person, but they're not going to be able to do that.
I think that's right, and I think a lot of lawyers are advisors as well. And you know, you pay a great lawyer for good advice. You know, to me, it's a little bit like when PCs came out. You know, once everyone got over the novelty of it, it was like, wait, this is going to change the world. Hey, it did change the world, but it didn't eliminate people's jobs. It made them better, made them more efficient.
Exactly.
Made them be able to get more done in a day. I think AI will have the same impact.
Yeah, I think so too. I've talked to a lot of people where they're, and usually it's VCs, and I always make fun of the VCs because they're investing in things they think are going to just replace people.
Right.
Like I ran a poll a couple of weeks ago about, do you think AI is going to replace physicians? Just ludicrous. Like I don't. And Vinay Khalsa, he's big, or whatever his name is, part of Khalsa Ventures. He made one of the craziest statements about a year ago that AI was going to replace, like within 5 years, like something like 60% of doctors. I'm like, tell me, you know, it's one of those memes like, tell me you know nothing about healthcare without telling me you know nothing about healthcare. Like it's, like that doesn't.
But don't you think outside the U.S. that could be the case, where they just don't have enough docs? Where, you know,
well, but I think it'll help though, right? I think with the labor shortage, to say that an AI is going to do all your diagnoses and prescribe and then jump over to do surgery, I'm like, I mean, that is so far out,
right?
And there's such a dearth of doctors anyway. So I see AI helping us with the labor shortage, helping the doctors and nurses be much more effective in what they're doing, and hopefully being able to spend more time with patients. But just in terms of like flat out replace, like, no, we don't need a doctor anymore because we have this app, this AI. That's all. Even with radiologists, everyone's like, oh, it's the easiest thing to replace. And then you see error rates, you look at other sorts of interpretation, other sorts of findings where it needs a human brain to kind of process it. I'm just going back to your point around PCs, where everyone is, oh my gosh, this is the thing that's just going to replace massive chunks of workers. We've never had that. There's always been an adjustment, an increasement, enhancement, not a, oh, nope. We have millions and tens of millions of people now don't have anything to do. We've seen fears of that for 150 years. So.
Yeah, I think that was probably true back when manufacturing, scale manufacturing first came into play, right? All the jobs are
Yeah,
going to go away. They changed. On the imaging thing, I would say that's one of the areas where I've seen AI show me more than other areas. I've got a
for sure.
ex-client, good friend who's doing a startup in the AI imaging space, and literally it's helping great physicians be a little greater. And it can run all night, doesn't need to sleep. And so, I think augmenting what a physician does, augmenting what a PA does, augmenting what any of us do, that's where AI will have its play. And when we work with clients, one of the initial things we have to do is get people over the sort of the buzz and hype about AI and get down to, okay, what product are you going to build that somebody wants to buy? What's going to solve for them? And it does come down to ROI. Can it replace people? Can it do something better and faster and cheaper? And that's an area where we've done a lot of work on helping people figure out what that's worth, how to price it, how to position it with prospective clients.
That's super valuable. Yeah, so I'd love to get your perspective more on that, because I agree with you with AI. Like, some of the low-hanging fruit where AI can help out certainly is in imaging. What other areas do you see over right now, over the next few years, where AI is actually going to have the impact? Because there seems to be an overinvestment, which typically happens, right? You get too much hype and overinvestment, and you have a lot of companies go out of business, but the innovation sped up. Like, that kind of creative destruction, not destruction for the clients, but within companies that provide the services is good, because it did move us further along than it otherwise would. And I see that happening with AI. Like, you get in the trough of disillusionment, not to carry water for Gartner. And I'm like, yeah, I don't see it's delusion. It's just more realism. You get to the steady state of, yeah. So I'd love your perspective on where you see the most sensical kind of no-brainer areas where AI is just going to help in healthcare. You mentioned imaging as one, which I totally agree.
Yeah, I'd say imaging, virtual care for sure. There's some cool things happening there where, AI can watch and look, and, if there's a different pattern, it's seeing something different, it can, do an alert, not like a stupid old school EMR alert where buzzers are going off all the time, but a really nuanced, thoughtful, helpful alert. In RevCycle, there's just a series of sort of, nuts and bolt tasks that it can help with. We've worked with a client that's doing some very cool things on gap closure, and sort of, chasing people down if they need a mammogram, or and very very capable AI. You still understand you're talking to a non-human, but it's getting very capable. I've got a ex-client, good friend, who's doing a startup where they're training their AI to talk from a provider standpoint, from a provider AI to a payer AI, to get all the mundane questions out of the way, and then get two humans on the call to make them more productive, as opposed to playing I'll leave a message, you leave a message, and you never get through. So I think it's going to be niche things like that, where they're really going to be helpful. It does seem as if some of the big companies are a little bit of put off by the FDA requirements that are going to come on the clinical side. So I don't see Epic rushing into the AI clinical side. That's going to be FDA regulated, which will be interesting to see. But it's not the Wild West, but there is a lot of stuff going on with AI. And everyone's got a different spin on it. I mean, I haven't met a hospital in America, I haven't talked to that many beyond lately, that doesn't want to do a couple projects with AI, right? Their boards are asking them, they want to show it. I'm on the board of a hospital. They've got a couple exciting projects going on with AI. All of which are sort of, they still have to lower costs, increase revenue, or improve patient care. And as long as they can hit one of those three pillars, then I think they'll find a home.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I wonder if AI will do what EHRs were supposed to do, which were supposed to really improve healthcare, and most institutions outside of making the data digital that I've talked to, their financial didn't improve, physician, nurse life didn't improve, clinical outcomes didn't improve. You know, it was important to get it digital, might have been too expensive.
Right.
But AI, this is one of the reasons that you're getting back to what we were discussing about earlier, why Epic or Cerner or anyone else shouldn't gatekeep. They can provide this foundation because the AI, a lot of these AI and the digital health, they can have really quick impacts. It's not impacts in years, like it takes years to happen, like an EHR.
Right.
This can be like, as you're probably seeing with some of these projects, it's pretty quick. Like improvements to the healthcare workers and the patients are interacting with, you know, this prior auth, like AI from provider side, payer side. It's pretty quick. And so you don't want anything to stifle that the innovation adoption and just giving improvement. Healthcare is not getting easier. People aren't happier now working healthcare than they were 10, 15 years ago. So I see AI having, and these kind of things, I really do see it helping. But it's going to be, like you said, in margins. It's not going to be all this monumental order of magnitude increase, but they're like, hey, in coding, we're better. Hey, in patient recapture, we're better. Hey, in this, we're better. Hey, in that, we're better. And when you add it up, like the cumulative impact, we're really moving the needle now.
I think that's right. And I think it's a fair statement you made that, you know, what EHRs, it's great, but really what they've done so far is just digitize healthcare. They're capturing data, and, you know, now people have to let the AI engines get to the data, right? They've got to find a way to do that and not try to lock them down. But as long as they can, it could really flourish. It could really help everybody if you can train the models and make them smarter and you know where to tune and tweak. And you know, that's what hospitals are trying to do. I mean, you know, at least none of the hospitals in the U.S. that I'm aware of are trying to hit grand slams. They just want to hit singles, and AI can help a lot with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, heck, some of them will take a base on balls. They don't care. You know how they don't care how it's almost like Moneyball, right? They don't care how they get on base. Let's just get them on base.
It's a great movie.
Such a good movie.
Some good lessons there. But yeah, I think that's right. And look, running a hospital and a health system is a pretty complex job. And they need tools and help. And, you know, again, you know, we're constantly advising customers, tell me how it's going to save them money. Tell me how it's going to improve patient care, or tell them what the overall return on investment is, because today's health system can only buy things that hit one of those three levers. They're not going to buy on sizzle anymore.
Well, that's so true. We only got like 10 minutes left, so I do want to hit on a couple other juicy topics that I'm particularly interested in. I think a lot of other people will be interested in. What's your take on, you know, Walmart basically just completely punting out in glorious fashion? I mean, they're out. And then Walgreens with Village MD shutting things out. Maybe they're going to sell all that stuff off.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know,
so retail health, like to me, it's, and I don't want to jump too far ahead in the answer. I was like, as a healthcare consumer, having better options, getting treated better, having a more transparent, more seamless experience. Yeah, man, please. But then when you see like a Walmart who they have so many locations, like, okay, they should be able to figure out how to do. Oh, they're out. And then Walgreens, you think that? No, okay, they went sideways in a hurry. So I'm just worried that we'll take a step back on healthcare consumerism. But maybe it's just these guys, they couldn't have never done in the first place. Anyway, what's your take on that?
Well, my quick take is healthcare is really hard. You know, big companies sometimes don't have the staying power that you would imagine. You know, you think about the companies that have been successful in healthcare, take Epic, right? They were obsessed about it. That's what they focused on. They were great at it, right?
True.
And we could give examples of that in lots of industries. So I think healthcare is really hard. I think it has to be adjacent to your core business. And yeah, I guess a lot of people walk into Walmart and they buy, you know, drugs and healthcare stuff. But I don't know. Is that really, do I want to go to Walmart to see my doc? I mean, maybe, but I think Walmart's big issue was on the revenue side, right? They can manage the cost side of that really well,
That's
but
true.
they're running into insurance issues, and they just didn't have maybe a sophisticated enough approach on that. In the long run, I think people like Amazon are going to be successful, right? I think they're going to figure it out. For a company that moves really fast, they're moving slow and steady in healthcare. I think they'll figure it out.
And that's probably how you have to do it, right? If you're really going to make it stick, especially when you're providing healthcare, you're not selling to healthcare providers. Now you are in the healthcare provider business.
Right.
I think you're right. You'd have to go in a more cautious, slow, much longer term horizon in your strategy.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to have a whole bunch of these private equity physician roll-ups in my portfolio. I don't know how well that's going to play. I know they can, private equity, there's some goodness to it. It can drive some efficiencies, but I don't see where that ends up well. I think that they're going to end up selling them off. Hospitals might buy them back. I don't know who's going to buy it, but private equity is not going to hang on to them forever. And that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. There's some.
Have you heard? Yes. Speaking of that, that's fascinating, Steve. So Mark, can't remember his last name now. The CEO, former CEO of Intermountain Healthcare, right? See, they were General Catalyst, and they bought Suma Health. Is that it? So huge private equity VC, whatever it is, bought a small health system. And I think they're merging in their Commure assets or some other kind of thing. Have you heard? I've heard nothing in the last 12 months about what's happening with that.
Yeah, I haven't either. It was announced, I think, last year around health a year ago. And I haven't. It's interesting. I mean, look, everybody needs a show place.
Look that up.
Everybody needs a hospital of the future, a show place to show their stuff. And it's interesting. General Catalyst has a lot of investments in the space. So why not? I don't understand the math of Suma, but I'm guessing they feel like they could run the hospital better than the team that was there before, and they can, force the adoption of their investments solutions. Forcing adoption. I've never seen that work, not once. If you try to jam something in, people will slow you to death. But so it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Because you look at the companies, lots of health systems have investments, and oftentimes the company expects that health system to then push their product into the health system, and it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen half the time, I don't think.
Or even when they spin out. Like I've talked to several friends of mine that have worked for companies that have spun out of health systems, and they'll make a couple saves, and then they find out that the rest of the health systems don't care about what they're doing. You're like, hey, it's fine. That's the way Providence is doing it, but we ain't Providence. And you built your whole business around serving a Providence-like health system. And wow, we're not getting uptake.
Yeah, or even some of the hospitals at the far end of that health system might say, hey, look, my priorities here are patient care, cost, this and that. I'll get to that next year. They don't adopt nearly as fast as everyone thinks. So forced adoption will be interesting to see how that plays out for General Catalyst.
I just looked at Mark Harrison, and it's the Health Assurance Transformation Corporation. That's the parent thing. But I've heard maybe I need.
I know we're running out of time, but sometime it'd be great to talk about. I guess it's called Revient, the business that Kaiser.
The Kaiser.
Yeah.
Oh, we got like 4 or 5 minutes left.
Yeah, it's fascinating for me because Kaiser has a really well-oiled machine. They've obviously done okay in states beyond California, Ohio, Colorado, Georgia, DC area, and
Hawaii.
Yeah, I forgot about that. And how well they can export that will be interesting. But Geisinger, that old clinic model that Geisinger, Capilani, Scott and White, all those guys had, Marshfield. There's something good. There's some goodness about that. I mean, maybe you don't want to get brain surgery there, but short of that, everything else, they can probably deliver it pretty well. So it'll be interesting to see where that takes off. And they have a big ambitions there. They're talking about 6 or 7 systems coming in in a given 12 months. So it'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on.
So so the whole Risant or whatever, however you say it. So they bought Geisinger. Who else did they just get? I thought there was another one just happened.
Yeah, there is another system, and it's not popping on the top of my mind. I'm feeling it was in New Jersey, but they're oh no, it was in North Carolina. It was Moses Cone. Moses Cone.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, so they're going to have to pick their spots. But if you were a health system looking for an out, and one out was getting sold to a for-profit, or one out was getting sold to a system like Geisinger, I mean, I think you'd feel better about whose hands you were leaving your patients in if you looked at a Geisinger or Kaiser model, I think.
Oh, totally agree.
Yeah.
We'll just see what antitrust might step up. But if they haven't stopped Optum from buying half the physicians and nurses in the country, I guess they don't. Not going to stop Kaiser on what they're doing.
I suspect if they're just doing it from market to market, I think their big fear is consolidation in a given market. So
yeah, that's true.
I think the guys who are buying Moses Cone probably won't make the hot list.
So, Stewart, have you heard anything about them? Like what? I know they bankruptcy. What's coming out of it?
Yeah, what a mess. Saddled it with a bunch of debt. Some of the people, the top end, got very wealthy on it. And the assets they bought up were never great. I mean, been in the business long enough to know the various health systems, and obviously there are a couple good ones in there, but they were buying what they could, and a lot of the good stuff wasn't for sale. So I don't see how that was ever a real winning proposition. And I feel bad for the people who invested in it, but that is just a giant mess. Optum's now back in the physician groups. I think there's going to be a lot of bankruptcy foreclosure stuff there because they bled them dry, and they're generally, they don't have a good clinical reputation, and that's a tough spiral to get out of. Yeah, truly a mess.
It sucks for the patients in those areas. They have to drive a lot longer.
Well, yeah, and I mean, maybe at the end someone else will come in and pick up some of the. I'm sure people will pick up the good pieces, and like in Massachusetts, they're already discussing that. They're trying to land them with a winner, but yeah, there are going to be some gaps.
Yeah, but how many of the good pieces are rural? The rural people typically get the short end of the stick again and again and again. So,
yeah, and I don't really know their makeup. I was surprised how many hospitals they ended up with. But generally, I don't think they were going after rural places, but I don't know that for sure.
They had a few, but yeah, you're right. There wasn't many. Let's see. Anything else that we should have talked about that we didn't? I mean, this has been awesome for me. It's super fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's great too. It's a business I love, and it's just fun to talk about it and to learn more every day about it. I feel fortunate to be in a space that's so everywhere and so complicated at the same time, right? There aren't easy answers, but there's some great people working on the problems in the space, and making get 1% better every day, I guess. At least that's the plan.
That's awesome. Well, it's been a great discussion. I really appreciate the time. I'll include a link to your profile in the description of the podcast and a link to your website as well. So if people want to learn more, they can connect with you on LinkedIn, and then go to your website to learn more about Steve Shihadeh and get to Market Health. But my friend, this was awesome. Thanks so much.
It was really awesome for me too. Thank you, Jeremy. Forward to seeing it out there in the wild.
Take care, my friend.
All right, see ya. Thanks.
See you, buddy. Bye.